but I want to do an Eamon with you because it serves as a absolutely wonderful foundation for everything else to come. And the reason why is because it starts with the laws. It really does. It starts with the laws. Now, I was looking through the archives, and I came across a archive that said, "Why develop?" Reasonable question. Why develop? And I thought, well, okay, that's a good question, but the question really hasn't been asked, at least not in a formal way, of why study the laws. There's a sentiment I'm going to try and get to with you.
For one, we are subject to them. It's
Yeah.
the drive
Okay.
for me is
Start there
okay.
and then go up a level. That is effect. Do you understand the difference between cause and effect?
Yes.
We go from effect, which is where you started. Let's now go to
Right.
cause and then cause of the cause. All right. So, effect, you're absolutely right. We are subject to them. Next.
I've never been able to get to that.
All right. I'll help with this. And then the third one should become obvious. The cause of the cause should become
Okay.
obvious, which is really that without the laws, we wouldn't be here because there could be no order. The secondary, most fundamental aspect to it, and of course, the first one would be neither would God or the absolute or however you want to address it. Because there has to be a substance, there has to be something to be able to replicate itself to begin with. In order for God to know itself, it had to forget everything it knew about itself. So that's why I study the laws, because it's really an aspect of respect for the fact that without them, I wouldn't be here. Neither would God. Now, let's do something together because I said I want to take you through an Eamon. I want to do an Eamon with you. The problem with doing an Eamon is that it can go too fast. You can say things like, you can talk about the 7 levels of the astrolight, and you can talk about the tarot, and you can talk about reincarnation and the possibility of immortality and gnome, sylph, salamanders, and you see what I mean? Like you can just go bam, 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 bam. And the way that it was presented in the early 1970s and 80s was like a buffet. You understand a buffet?
Yeah.
Instead of going to a restaurant and sitting down and they hand you a menu and you say, I would like the cordon bleu or whatever the case is. Buffet, a buffet is you just get a plate. Actually, they don't even give you a plate at the table. They're just like, they still expect a tip, but they're like, go get it yourself. Anyway, you walk up to this massive buffet, get your plate, and then you pick what you want. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this. Take it back and you eat it. That's how the Eamon was presented in the first place because nothing like it had ever shown up on the planet, really. But you see, it was like a crunch. Get it all out there. Well, okay, we've got it all out there. That's fine. Now it's time to actually do what the proposition was to begin with, which was either prove it or disprove it. Take it in for your own life or don't. Now, you've heard things. We're going to go through some things kind of systematically that you've heard before. You've heard things like the physical body is the coat for the electrical forms of the soul and spirit. Yeah, sure. Got that. Next bit, please. Well, I'll ask you, raise your right hand for me, please. Yeah. Good, thank you. Raise your left hand. Yeah, look left or right or whatever the case is. See, you can do all of these sorts of things, but now I say raise your soul. Make your spirit flare. Can you do it? Problem is that you don't know what the soul and spirit are. They're kind of abstract. And so how can you take a premise that the physical form is the coat of the electrical presence of a soul and spirit without knowing what those things are. It's a proposition at best, and at worst, you teach it to others as so. See, this is what happens, doesn't it? Like, oh, that sounds really good. Echo, yeah. Let's not be echoes. I'm going to give you a starting point for knowledge of what your soul and your spirit are. Does that sound reasonable? This is how we're going to work. We're going to work this way, okay, for the next however long it takes. Look around you. Just look around you. Pick an object in the room, right? Anywhere. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Now, you sense that thing. For me, right here is a very beautiful lamp. Okay? I sense it. See it. Now, touch your nose. And you feel that, don't you?
Right.
Take a sniff of the air. Take a sip of something, or whatever the case might be. Get a sense of the taste of things. So we've got, and listen. You hear my voice now. They say that the eyes are the window to the soul, but the reality of it is that all five senses are the window to the soul. The soul is in receipt of things. And anytime you have a sense impression, it's one of the five aspects of your soul that takes it in. Now, the part of you that recognizes the fact that you're hearing my voice right now, for example, or that you touched your nose, or that you looked at whatever it is, that is your soul registration of something. Okay, that is your soul that registers it. It has to do with the five centers, but it also has to do just with pentagrammic nature. Aside from sun and moon, which represent the higher thinking and higher emotional center, the other five classical planets have to do with the aspects of the soul. And so what happens as you go through this quickening in your mother's womb is that all five planets go, wow, there's a new life appearing here. I'm going to send a bit of a signal down to it. Yeah? So you get your Jupiterian influence, you get your Saturn influence, you get your Martian influence, your Venusian influence, and your Mercurian influence. They all come in different doses, but this is what makes your soul unique, and yet it's still planetary. It doesn't mean that it's Earth planetary. It's an astral thing. The Wanderers, okay? But if you want to get in touch with what your soul is, start to become aware of what it is that senses your environment. That's it. And in the past, we've called this self-observation or remembering yourself, roughly. Vivify your experience of life. That will charge up and help you become aware of what your soul is. And so when someone says, raise your soul, what they're saying to you is vivify. Vivify this aspect. Like right now, presumably you're looking at me. Remember yourself, observe that part of you that's actually seeing me, and become aware of the fact that you exist at that same time. Okay? That's how you raise your soul, just like raising your right or left arm. So, do you have any questions on how to sense your soul? It's not actually that difficult. It's just no one ever taught you. Fair? Do you think you could knock that out in like 3 or 4 minutes? That's pretty good. Might be a record. Okay, now how about the spirit? Make your spirit flare. That's the question, wasn't it? Anyone want to have a go? You've got one. It's promoting you and urging you to do so.
It's not something that's been taught before.
Well, darn it, it should have been.
Mm-hmm.
It's been talked about, hasn't it?
Yeah.
You know, I find that actually kind of irresponsible,
Yep.
personally. So in Taoism and Buddhism and a lot of the Asiatic and Eastern religions, they have this particular exercise. And the exercise goes somewhat like this, where you sit in a meditation and you think, am I my body? And you let that response echo, and you'll say no, because you even use the word my body, right? It's clear, isn't it, that you're not? Yeah. Am I my mind? Am I my thoughts? and my emotions. And it's not like rote. You really want to go through and listen for something to echo. And what you get to is this point where you almost feel a bit stumped. Like, okay, I'm not any of these things. What am I? And the answer is your spirit. It's an individuality within you that very seldom gets to come out. It is that I that we've been talking about, not in small letters, but capital I.